AI can now read and write your Power BI reports, but only if they're saved as text files and not as binary files. It's easier than you think, and I'm going to show you how. Well, if you're anything like most of us, you are looking at a world that is changing faster every single day and wondering how it is that you stay on top of this rapidly evolving world and how you stay relevant in a changing marketplace. How do you apply all of these new techniques and technologies that are coming out to the work that you do in Power BI to stay more relevant every day? So what I want to do is walk you through some of that. I've got some really interesting videos coming up of how we can leverage AI to do our work much more quickly. And I'm not just talking about having Copilot write some DAX measures or some M query for us. It can certainly do that, but it's going to do so much more. We're going to have it write entire Power BI reports from scratch, and they're going to be meaningfully effective. But the first thing we have to do is to get away from the idea of a Power BI report as a black box or a binary file that you just shove data into and you don't really know what's happening under the hood. We have to take responsibility for how all of the things that we put into this report, how are they actually stored and maintained. Turns out, other than the actual data in the tables, everything in the report is metadata. You can look at it. It can be seen and edited by a text editor, but only if you save it in the right format. And when you can look at it in a text editor, that means that AI can read it and write it and operate over it, which is going to unlock a tremendous amount of capabilities for us. So what I want to show you today is how we can save a Power BI report in the right format so that we can take advantage of those capabilities. So the first thing that we want to do is open up a Power BI report. So I've got a basic one-page Power BI report here, and we're going to save this Power BI report as a Power BI project. Very easy to do, but quick note, the first thing you want to do is enable this functionality. So you're going to go to File, Options and Settings, and Options. And then we're going to go to Preview Features, about halfway down the global settings here. And you do want to turn on this Power BI Project.pbip save option. And you want to store SemanticModel using TMDL format and store reports using enhanced metadata format. These are crucial not just for the Power BI project, but also for AI being able to operate over these reports. So we're going to hit OK. If you have not enabled this before, you will have to restart Power BI Desktop and then just reopen the file. Next, we're going to hit File and Save As. We're going to browse our local machine here, and I'm going to save it to this sales demo folder here. We're going to click this type drop down, and we will save it as a Power BI project, PBIP. And we're just going to keep this sales demo file name here, and we will hit save. What we've done is we have serialized the PBIX file out into multiple files and into actually a hierarchical folder structure with multiple subfolders. So what I want to do now is walk you through what that folder structure looks like. So my favorite way to do that actually is in a tool called VS Code, or Visual Studio Code. I've got that open right here, and I've already got this folder open, the sales demo folder, into which we saved that Power BI project. And so you see we have the Power BI project right here. In order to open it, all you have to do is you just go to File, Open Folder, but I've already done that for you. And what I want to do is I want to walk you through the structure that we get when we save a report as a PBI project. All right, so we have in our root directory 3 things here. So we've got a PBIP extension file here. We're going to take a look at that in a moment. And then we've got a folder for the semantic model and a folder for the report. And you can see here that all 3 of these start with the same name. This happens to have been the name of the PBIX file that we opened. And so let's take a look at what is in this PBIP file. There are 2 basic formats that the code is going to be in. One is in TMDL, which we will get into some more detail in a moment. The other one is in JSON. So even though this is not a JSON file extension, this is laid out in a JSON format. So if you've ever seen that, you'll be familiar with it. If you're not familiar with JSON, that's perfectly fine. You can still kind of skim this and get a sense of what is going on. So here we have our pathway to the report folder. You notice that this is the folder here that the report is pointing towards. So basically, if you were to open up this folder in Windows Explorer and you double clicked on the PBIP file, it would open this report back up in Power BI Desktop, and essentially this is sort of saying where is the report content. So let's go ahead and dive into the report structure. So if we expand this folder, this is what is inside the report folder. You see the first thing here is definition.pbir. If for any reason you should happen to lose this PBIP file, you can also open up this PBIR file as well, and it will also open the Power BI project in Power BI Desktop. So that's another way to do it. And basically what this is saying, again in JSON format, is this is saying the relative path to the semantic model. This dot dot just simply means go up one level in the folder hierarchy. This slash means go down one level to this folder. And so it is simply saying that the data set is in this relative path. Sometimes if you have what we call a thin report or what is using a live connection, this will instead of path here, this will have, I think, URL, and it will have a URL to the semantic model that is in the Power BI service. So next we're going to look at this platform file here. This simply has the display name of the report. So this is what will be shown in the Power BI service when you publish it. If you wanted to change the display name, this is where you would find that. There are some static resources here. For example, this is the logo that I used in the report. This is the JSON theme that I am using. So if you want to know where those are stored, they are stored here in the static resources. And then this is information on the report as a whole. So in here, you're going to see things like the theme that has been imported, the name of the theme, the location where you would find it under the shared resources where we were just looking a moment ago. You're also going to have the images that I showed you, so any images that are in the report. You would also have, if there were any report level filters, they would also show up here in this file as well. You also see another subfolder for pages, and if we expand this, you see a pages.json, and you're going to see a subfolder for every page in the report. This particular project only has one page, so it only has one subfolder. If we open this pages.json, you'll see here that this has a list of all of the pages. Again, there is just one, and it also shows the order of the pages. So if you ever wondered why one page shows up before the other, not just that you put them there, but how does it remember what order they should be in? Well, this is where that order is stored, and you could actually change this yourself right here if you wanted to. The active page, so if you remember you want to open a page when you hit the save button, that's the page that a user will go to whenever they open the report in the Power BI service. This is where you define that right here, and it is defined by this random hexadecimal nonce here. And you'll see it is the same as the name for the folder. So if we expand that folder, you'll see that there is a page.json. So this is the definition for that particular page. And you can see we have things like the height and the width. You can see that we have a page name. I didn't give it a very meaningful page name, but you can obviously name it whatever you want. This is where that is stored. And you also, if there were any page level filters, that detail would be here as well. You'll see that there is a visual subfolder. We can open that, and then there's a subfolder for every one of the visuals. We're not going to go through all of these, but let's just maybe pick one of these at random. And there's a visual.json, and you have various details here, like, for example, you have the x and y coordinates. You have a z-axis coordinate as well. You've got height and width dimensions, a tab order, which is sort of, you can see, sort of similar to that z-axis. This one happens to be a text box, so this is probably the page title, for example. And in fact, you can see here what is in it. So yes, indeed, that is our page title. Let's try maybe see if we can find one a bit more interesting. And you can tell here from the visual type that this is a slicer. Again, we've got our height and width, x and y up here. And the field comes from the date table, and it is the year column in that. And you can see here some of the properties, like the text size is a 10-point font, for example. The padding is set to 0. The layout is set to a tile, for example, so on and so forth. So all of these bits of information are right here in this JSON file. Now, I'm not for a moment suggesting that you spend a lot of time perusing this report. I just wanted you to see that it is here, and this is where all of your metadata is stored. To me, I think the semantic model is actually considerably more interesting, so let's take a look at that. Under the semantic model folder, you've got a diagram layout. So this literally just, if you go to Power BI Desktop and you go to your data model view, and so this is in one position, this is in another position, how high and wide each of these tables looks in this layout. All of that is governed by all of this detail here. So here's your height and width, so on and so forth, and your x and y position, so on and so forth. It's not the relationship that comes in a different place. It's just simply the layout of that data model. The dot platform gives us the name of the semantic model. Again, this is what it would show in the Power BI service once you publish it. So I'm going to move straight into the definitions here. You'll see that there is a database.temdl, TMDL. So this is our first TMDL file that we've seen, and so this will be written in the TMDL language. So TMDL stands for Tabular Model Definition Language, and it is a really useful tool and actually fairly easy to read. So I'm going to start with this model.temdl file here. And the first thing I want to point out is you've got this / notation. So this is how you describe a comment in TMDL. So you put triple slashes, and then customarily, though not a requirement, we add a space, and then we write a description following that. So here we define a TMDL object that is a model, and we're going to call it model. We're going to move on to the relationships.temdl file. So there are a number of relationships here. In fact, there are 3 of them, one from the product table to the sales table, one from customer to sales, one from date to sales, and those are all listed right here in the from and to columns. And you'll see it's using that same sort of table.column notation that we saw earlier. You'll see here that there is a subfolder for cultures, a subfolder for roles, and a subfolder for tables. Let's check out the tables first, and I'm going to start with the customer table. And again, you'll notice that we are using the / notation for a comment. There's an interesting trick here that I'll show you in a little bit, but then we define a table and then the table called customer. Then the next thing we're going to do is define a column called customer ID. We assert the data type as an int 64. This column happens to be hidden. It is also a key column. And the source column is customer ID. So this is actually the source coming out of Power Query. Another one is customer name. This is a string data type. We have specifically assigned there to be no summarized by, and the source column coming out of Power Query is called customer name. There's also a partition called customer that is of a type of M, meaning that it is an M Power Query partition, and the mode is set to import, and here is the definition for that that partition, and you should recognize this as standard mQuery script. Let's just take a look at one more. If we look at the date table, so again we have a comment for our date table, and we're defining a table called date. And in this one, we are saying data category time. What this means is that this has been marked as a date table. This one happens to have a measure in it called max year. Again, we're defining a column here called date. Data type is date time. This is a key. And the format string is as a long date, so on and so forth. We can also take a look at the row level security roles here. So we can open up this East region role here. And so this model permission read means that this is a row level security role. And the table permissions are on the customer table and the region column. All right, one more interesting note that I want to point out. Coming back to these descriptions in this text here, you'll notice that we're using a lot of descriptions here, and there's a reason for doing that. If we come back to Power BI Desktop, you will notice here, if I click on this customer table, for example, there's a description for the table. If I expand this, click on customer ID, there is a description for the column. If I come to my TMDL view, for example, and I come to the customer table and I say right click script TMDL to script tab, this will give me that exact same TMDL script. Now, one addition though is that it adds this create or replace statement here at the beginning. And you'll notice that the description that we saw for the table a moment ago, so the description for the table is customer.dimension, 1 row per customer, etc. You'll notice that that is the exact comment in the TMDL code right here. So in fact, actually, this is how that description gets stored. A comment and a description are one and the same. One note is that the description has to be written immediately preceding the object that it is describing. So this is a description for the table customer, so the description has to come right before that line, and the indentation in TMDL does matter, kind of like YAML or some other tab sensitive languages. You'll see here is the description or the comment, if you will, for the customer ID column, and again it has to be immediately preceding, and it has to be on the same tab indentation as the beginning of the column line. And so if we read this description here, surrogate key, hidden because, etc., we come to the model view and we click on customer ID, there is the description. So yet one more way that we can we can add detail to our Power BI models. One thing that I've done in the past is I have taken a model and I've scripted out this TMDL, and I've taken this and thrown it into a chatbot, into say ChatGPT or Claude Chat, and I've said add descriptions for all of these columns. Now sometimes it does a good job, sometimes it doesn't do such a great job, but it'll give it its best try. You might also have to tell it this this / notation here, because TMDL is a pretty new language, so it isn't deeply mature in writing TMDL, but if you tell it how it should be written, it can usually do that pretty easily, and it'll just spit this TMDL script back at you. You just copy and paste this into this window, you hit this apply button, and it will make all of your changes. So for example, if I were to make an addition here and say TMDL is awesome, and I just say apply, well, then that will be reflected pretty quickly, so you'll see it here at the end of our new description. So that is the start of how we get all of our model metadata into code, and in the next video I'm going to show you how we can create a GitHub repository, put this code into a GitHub repo, which again will make it that much easier for AI to interact with it, particularly when you're not around. So that's the next thing that we're going to do. I hope that you get subscribed so you won't miss that video, and there are even some other way cooler things than that. So get subscribed so you won't miss a thing, and I'll see you in the next video.